was screaming and hollering, I was praying, and next thing I know, the power lines come down.
We barely made it to the basement just in time.
Families are picking up the pieces after a tornado devastated suburban neighborhoods. Now people are leaning on each other to cope with the aftermath of the storms.
And the tornado left behind a trail of extensive damage. Homes were ripped apart. This morning, we're taking a closer look at the strength of this powerful tornado as the news at 4 starts right now.
And good morning to you. I'm Michelle Relerford.
And I'm Patrick Fazio. Let's get right over to Storm Team meteorologist Andy Avalos with your calmer, cooler forecast out there. Andy.
Boy, and cooler is the headline of the forecast today. For many, when you step outdoors, you'll say, wow, I really noticed the difference. As we take a look at temperatures across the area. Gary, good morning. You're at 47. It's 48 in DeKalb. Even though Woodstock is missing, current temperature there is 49 degrees. 52 in Kankakee. Officially 54 at O'Hare. So readings generally from the mid-40s to the mid-50s across the area. So it is a cooler start for sure. Maybe even a jacket or sweater, not a bad idea as you're heading out the door. And the air is considerably drier and the wind is calm in many locations, and that's why it is cooler. With dew points in the 40s, the temperature cools to that level. So as you're heading out the door this morning, as I mentioned, maybe a light jacket or sweater. But we'll climb from the 40s through the 50s and eventually into the 60s. It'll be a very nice day today, which is certainly good news, not only for you to enjoy, but because of all the cleanup and the severe weather that we're still recovering from. We'll have more on the forecast for the rest of the day and the rest of the week when more storm chances will be returning coming in just a bit.
All right, we'll check back with you. Thank you, Andy. Residents in Naperville are still dealing with the aftermath of that destructive tornado. The National Weather Service says one subdivision was hit by an EF3 level tornado. NBC5's Alicia Chavarria is live in Naperville. And Lisa, what kind of wind speeds hit that area?
Well, Patrick, the National Weather Service is telling us that the wind speeds were up to about 140 miles per hour. We want to show you one of the homes that took the hardest hit. Not only did it take the hardest hit, it was just obliterated. And there were 2 people that were inside of this home. Thankfully, they are recovering this morning. But we want to show you this. A doorbell camera captured the tornado as it tore through this neighborhood. This home on Princeton Circle, it suffered the most damage. Again, a couple was inside at the time. They were both rescued and are expected to fully recover from their injuries. Now, officials say that 19 homes were destroyed by this EF3 tornado. And despite all of the damage done to this stretch of homes near Ranchview Drive in Naperville, only 8 people were injured and all are expected to survive. People are now sharing stories of the few minutes they had to take shelter. One resident said that she grabbed her daughter from her room minutes before her window blew out.
There was just glass in her crib, like big shards of glass, and it was wedged in the wood. Like that's how fast the glass kind of broke. It was in 3 rooms. It was all the way down the stairs, so that's how much force it had.
Many of the residents said they had maybe less than 2 minutes to try to find shelter. Now, cleanup, this is going to be a long process. The Naperville fire chief said more than 130 homes had some sort of damage done. But again, nothing like this. This used to be a 2-story home, and now you can see all that is left behind is rubble. Now, we'll talk more about what residents are saying and how grateful they are despite the damage that you're seeing out here. We'll bring you that coming up in our next half hour. Reporting live in Naperville, Alicia Chavarria, NBC5 News.
And looking at that damage, really amazing everyone survived. Lisa, thank you very much. And for a different perspective on the damage from the tornado, let's take to the skies here. You can really get a sense of the scale of the devastation. These 140-mile winds brought to so many homes. More than 20 homes in Naperville were left uninhabitable, and at least 8 people were injured. Alicia Roman joining us now this morning to talk about what we know at this point about that tornado itself and the path. Alicia?
a very destructive tornado, Michelle. Of course, you see by the pictures, the National Weather Service was out yesterday assessing the debris pattern, the rotation of those storms, and just how far that debris has flown. For the Naperville and Willow Springs tornado, we've talked about it right now, preliminary, an EF3. We say preliminary because the National Weather Service will release more information later on this afternoon. But you can see the peak winds up to 140 miles per hour. The length of the tornado, several miles. That will be assessed later on this afternoon, and we'll have that information as well. The last time we had an EF2 tornado or stronger to hit the Chicago area, we have to go back to 2015, and that was the tornado that hit Coal City. Many of you actually may remember that one. Then we have the Plainfield and Romeoville tornado. That was assessed as an EF0 with peak winds up to 85 miles per hour. The length of that tornado spanning about 3.2 miles. Still, the width is to be determined. As I mentioned, of course, the National Weather Service will have later assessment released later on this afternoon. But just to understand the damage surveys, the National Weather Service meteorologists, as well as the emergency management of that county, will go out and inspect the damage in person. They determine what caused the damage, whether it be a downburst or a tornado. In this case, it was a tornado. They determined the magnitude of the damage. Of course, you've seen the structures just obliterated from the damage of the tornado, so they'll assess that, and they understand if the warning process worked and if the people in the path were aware, and in this case, they were. Coming up in the next half hour, I'll take a closer look at just how destructive an EF3 tornado can be. But for now, we'll send it back to you, Patrick and Michelle.
All right, thank you very much, Alicia. Time now is 4:04. The cleanup also continues in Woodridge this morning. Roofs there are obliterated, garages smashed to pieces, downed trees litter the sidewalk there, and the tornado, it carved a 3-mile path of destruction. At least 100 homes and businesses have been damaged there. The power is still knocked out on dozens of blocks. But many say if it were not for the sirens, the outcome could have been far worse.
It was quite scary. We heard the siren go off from the cell phone. We read it. I said, we probably should get to the basement. Looked outside, and by the time I said, let's get to the basement, it was a freight train.
So almost as fast as the storm blew in, neighbors came together to help out whoever they could. And right now in DuPage County, ComEd says 945 customers are without power still. Crews are working on 12 outages at this time. They expect to restore all power by this afternoon.
And that tornado warning likely saved lives and more people from getting hurt Sunday night. Here's Natalie Martinez with their stories of survival.
Good morning to you all. We've heard the word miraculous and miracles so many times out here in Woodridge and Naperville. How few people were injured and nobody was killed out here. Well, this morning, survivors are telling us their stories. Flattened home in Naperville on Princeton Circle off Ranch View, where a couple in their 60s lived.
You can't imagine anybody would live through that.
Katie Long Piper's home is next door.
They don't know if it's inhabitable.
When she stepped out, she had only one concern for the couple.
Where are they? He was awake and alert and doing good. She was on the phone today, talking with her daughter. So, that's a miracle right there, considering they weren't in their basement.
Their niece was able to pull jewelry and heirlooms from the rubble.
Luckily, all the family photos and everything important is saved, like files, and just like a bunch of albums of like weddings.
Nearby in Woodridge, Bruno Pluta lost his garage and part of his home, but he and his family are perfectly intact.
Where did you stay?
I'm going to go with my daughter.
Lorelei lost part of her roof, but is holding on to one of the only things that matters.
It was pretty devastating.
Without a basement, she jumped into the bathtub at her ranch.
I was scared. It was very loud. It was the freight train sound.
Bridget Casey shows us how she lost nearly everything, but not two priceless items.
My husband's ashes, and then my kids made sure that our bearded dragon got out too.
She and her 4 kids are safe.
I'm just happy that no one got hurt. That's the only thing to smile about.
In all, 11 people at least were injured. None of those injuries life-threatening. 8 from Naperville, 3 from Woodridge. The Red Cross has also set up a shelter here, an overnight shelter here at Thomas Jefferson Junior High School in Woodridge. Natalie Martinez, NBC 5 News.
And you can stay with NBC5 for continuing coverage of the tornado cleanup. You can get the latest information anytime on the NBC Chicago app.
Time now is 4:07. Let's turn to the pandemic. There is an increasing threat from the Delta variant. It is the most dangerous strain so far, now contributing to the rise in infections in 8 states. Health experts say the unvaccinated could prolong the pandemic.
It's starting to accelerate really quickly in the U.S. So last week, about 10% of the virus isolates were the Delta variant. Now it's up to 19%. So it seems to have pretty regular doubling.
That doctor also says if enough Americans get vaccinated, there will not be a surge. So far, 65% of adults are at least partially vaccinated.
And the U.S. has hit an encouraging milestone. COVID deaths in the U.S. have dipped below 300 a day for the first time since March of last year. The death toll is at 600,000, while worldwide the count is close to 3.9 million. Another milestone on Monday, 150 million Americans were reported fully vaccinated.
The U.S. northern and southern borders will stay shut to non-essential travel until at least July 21st. The restrictions at the U.S. land borders with Canada and Mexico were first enacted in March of 2020, prompted by the coronavirus pandemic. They were set to expire yesterday, but the Department of Homeland Security announced a 30-day extension on Sunday after Canadian leaders announced their own extension on Friday.
4:09 this morning, an effort to move forward on voting rights is expected to hit a wall in the U.S. Senate today. The debate is largely about how lawmakers get business done. NBC's Tracy Potts has more.
A vote is happening in the U.S. Senate this afternoon on whether to move forward on voting rights, a bill known as the For the People Act. It expands voter registration, early voting, and tightens rules around election security, interference, finance, and ethics.
We don't expect there to be a magical 10 votes.
10 Republicans, that's required just to move things forward, and that won't happen today. The parties united against it, so this bill may never come up for debate. The real question is how many Democrats agree. A handful have said publicly they want 60 votes, support from both parties, just to debate.
That is nowhere to be found in the Constitution. And it just became a tool for obstruction.
Republicans argue Democrats have used the 60-vote rule before.
The same Senate rule a Democratic minority had used with abandon was now somehow a racist relic.
Are you afraid to debate it? Do you not have any good arguments?
A compromise voting rights bill introduced by Democrat Joe Manchin also failed to get Republican support. So after today, it may be back to square one.
Black Voters Matter activists are headed to Washington today to push for a voting rights law. Tracy Potts, NBC News.
And the fight for D.C. statehood continues today at the U.S. Capitol as proponents prepare to make their case in front of a Senate committee. The hearing takes place this morning. It will only be the second time ever the Senate has held a D.C. statehood hearing. Many in the GOP are opposed to the push for statehood, with some stating that the hearing is all about creating 2 new Democratic seats in the Senate. Well, coming up, a family searching for answers after a woman and her baby are killed in a hit-and-run crash, and now her other child fighting for his life.
Then layoffs for Chicago public schools. We'll tell you why the teachers union is raising concerns.
And cleaning up after the tornado, strangers are coming together to clear the damage.
We're back now at 4:14 with a tragic story this morning. A woman and baby were killed and a boy critically hurt in a hit-and-run crash.
Well, coming up, an NFL player uses social media to make a historic announcement.
Here's NBC5's Jeff Blanzy with a preview of morning sports.
Pretty quiet around the sports world last night. Sox getting a much-needed night off, while the Cubs continue to struggle scoring runs. And David Ross was a little upset with Javi Baez pulling him from the game after the 4th inning. We'll explain why next in sports.
Coming up next at 4:30, a surprising lawsuit from a former Cubs star. Wait till you hear the accusations Ben Zobrist is making.
Also find out what singer T-Pain says set off a 4-year battle against depression.
And it's going to be a sunny day ahead, but there could be some more rain on the way. Andy will tell us when the wet weather is coming back. That's up next.